guys, so I want to talk about something that happens very often. It's not quite as on the nose as what it probably should be as far as like the steps that needs to be taken, but transitioning from a big to a guard happens all the time. This could be happening because of, as you move up in age or competition, generally the average of the height goes up. And so whenever that happens, typically you're listed from position from your height. And that means your position is going to move down, down, down. So that might mean having to transition from a big to a guard. And today we're going to be talking about the steps to go over, the things to learn, the things to focus on in order to make this transition as easy as possible, and it might even make you a better player when it's all said and done. Now we're going to be talking about transitioning from a big to a guard or a big to a small, and not a small to a big, because generally this is how the process goes. Most of the time you're not going to be going from a small to a big, it's going to be from a big to a guard. So that's what we're going to be discussing here today. So you might be in this position right now. If not, most of us at some point are gonna have to go through this. If we're serious about basketball, if you're young and the competition is just, down here, most of the time you're gonna be up at the taller position. And then once you move up in that competition, everything's gonna start to level things out, or maybe even make it to where you have to know these guard positions in order for you to make a difference in the game. So what are the things that you need to focus on whenever you're making this change? There are a few things. A lot of it depends on what type of player you're gonna be as a guard or as a smaller player. It's not always as black and white as what some people might think, but I'm going to give you guys a couple scenarios or a couple of different things to focus on as far as the importance of things. There's quite a bit of difference depending on how much of a big you were playing. Maybe you're transitioning from a center to a point guard. That could be very possible. I kind of had to go through this a little bit myself, so I kind of know about this from experience, and I've seen people having to do this quite often. So the main thing I think with this, as far as importance go, you have to be able to handle the ball. I'm not saying like if you're not a point guard, you don't need to be this crazy good dribbler or something like that. It's just about ball control. You have to be familiar with handling the ball. With whether it be passing, whether it be dribbling, just being able to dribble in a sense. Now, nowadays, some of these bigs can dribble and do a lot of these guard things, so maybe it's not a big ask for a lot of these bigs, but being able to handle the ball is going to be critical whenever you're making this transition. So a lot of times, you may need to drop some weight as well. If you're transitioning into a guard, expecting to play at a high level with some of these very quick individuals, and you're having just this excess weight on you, excess body fat, you don't want anything holding you down. You have to make sure you're able to keep up with these guys. So a lot of times, this might mean you need to drop some weight. And as being a guard, it's having that mass and that strength isn't as necessary. So if you have to sacrifice some strength or some muscle, don't look at that as a negative. Sometimes that is necessary in order to be able to be as light as you can, because you want to be light in order to, you don't want any excess weight weighing you down whenever you're trying to make these hard cuts or these fast accelerations or these jumps. So just keep that in mind and check your weight and see if you might need that excess weight loss. So a big transition from a big to a guard, that's quite a bit different, is going to be defense. So defense as a big and defense as a guard, perimeter defense is much different than in the post defense or under the basket defense. Being able to play someone straight up around the perimeter, it's a big challenge, especially if you're not used to it as a big. So you have to be able to stay in front of someone. Make sure you're familiar with how to work around screens as the ball defender, and not the screener defense, because that's probably what you're used to as a big. So this might mean working more on your footwork, your lateral movement. This might need more focus for you whenever you are making this transition. And this one might be more of an obvious one, sort of the same with ball handling. A lot of the bigs do a lot of this as well nowadays. It's not as frowned upon, so bigs they're not as timid to shoot. But being able to shoot in basketball, you can always use this. So if you're just not comfortable shooting or you don't have your shot down, now this is all going to depend on what type of player you're going to be. You might be a point guard, and a lot of times point guards don't need to shoot. They just need to be able to finish. They just need to be able to dribble well and finish well, and be good passers and being able to run the offense. Not always need to be a good shooter, but it can always be used. So my thought process is, if you can add this to your game, it can always be used. So at the very least, if you're just not comfortable with shooting, make that a strong focus with your training. I'm sure there are a few other things to do and focus on with making this transition, but those are the things that I wanted to point out and kind of let you know of during this process. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys. Hopefully this will make things easier for you during this process. Maybe you're going from middle school to high school. That's usually like the biggest transition, and a lot of times this has to be done. So thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you got something out of this. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this. As always, make sure to subscribe and click the bell to get notified for each one of my videos. And I'll see you guys next time.